the first time I used, for the first time in my life ever, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt accepted. I felt attractive. Um, I felt all these things that I had been searching for. And so in my mind, I had found the magic elixir in my life. And so I just dove in with both feet. And meanwhile, yes, became a professor. I was also the senior director of marketing at a law school. So I was pulling in probably, I don't know, 140,000. The first time I used meth, I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know he asked me if I partied. And at the time I did go out and drink, and to my definition of party, but party is a word that you use in the crystal meth crowd, right? And so anyway, I used, and it was at the time, the greatest experience of my life, because like I said, there was no shame. There was no voice in my head saying how terrible I was. This person really wanted me. And so I dove into the scene. And I quickly lost track of my life. In the beginning, I had the kids every other week. So in the beginning, I said, well, I'm only going to use every other weekend, right? And then that led into, but some during the week when they're gone. And then it was slowly I started using while they were in the house. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop using. I had all this money at my disposal. I was in fresh meat in the crowd, in the scene. And I just couldn't pass up all the men who wanted to come see me. I didn't realize that it was because I had, baggies of meth that they were there to see. They weren't there to see me, but that's what it felt like. And so I just let it loose. I let it take control, and I was, I'd be doing a drug deal at 4 a.m. and then 8 a.m. trying to do a presentation to the board at the law school, or trying to teach a class, and I'm out of it. In my mind, I didn't know I was so out of it, because the drug kind of makes you believe that no one knows, kind of, but everybody knew there was something wrong. So eventually I got let go, and they stopped scheduling me for classes, and so I was faced with what to do next, and then that's when I got my first arrest, because something that happens with crystal meth too, with prolonged use, is psychosis, and if you have a predisposition for schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness, crystal meth will take it and explode and expand it. So I had a tendency of bringing in these young guys who didn't have a car, job, all this stuff, and I felt it was my purpose to take care of somebody. This particular gentleman was hearing voices. He was ultra paranoid. He was duct taping down my blinds and all that kind of stuff. And so I made him leave. Well, he left and walked to the police department and told them that I was date raping people and that I had drugs in the house and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that gave them enough to have a warrant. That was my first arrest. And so from then, it just went downhill because I couldn't get a job anymore. So I had to wait tables, and I couldn't function. Talk about functioning. I was trying to work and do drugs, and I just couldn't. And so that ended up leading into a shoplifting addiction. And I got, in a crowd where we were running scams all the time and writing bad checks and whatever we could do that day to generate enough money for drugs. And if we had extra, we would eat food. And so I ended up, of course, my car was repossessed. The kids had to go back and they had to go live with their mom full time. And eventually I was evicted. So then I just became homeless. And the only thing left I could do was, become a sex worker. And I say prostitute because I don't like to lump what I did in with sex workers, because I believe it's all in the motivation of what you're doing. I was a prostitute. I was selling my body for drug money, and whatever men would pay for. Some of them would pay for me to clean their house in my underwear. It was whatever it was, I would do just to get money, and wasting away to nothing. I was down to like 125 and just out of it. And so that's the brief summary of it. My mom ended up coming to rescue me, forced me actually to come back home where we live in West Virginia. And she wanted me to get sober up there. And it lasted a couple of months. I escaped and came back to Charlotte. back with my friends. And then one thing led to another, and I had an APB out because I didn't show up. I was arrested 4 times. And the last time I just turned myself in because they had thrown me out of the car. I had nothing but a dead phone in my hand. And so I just walked up to a police officer and said, I have to eat. I need to sleep. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I am. I didn't know what city I was in. I could have swore I was in Roanoke, Virginia, but I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was really out of it. They had this really pure, clean meth from a Mexican cartel that was mailed to them. They didn't tell me how strong it was, and they shot me up with a bunch. And I went into psychosis, and they couldn't handle it, so they threw me out of the car downtown Charlotte. And I was just confused for a few days. So that last time when I finally got to sleep, I finally got to eat in jail, and finally they let me out. My kids my daughter was 16 at the time, my son 14. She was the only one that would answer the call because this was my 4th time, so everybody, my friends and my family were like, we're done with you, but my daughter was never done with me. She was always concerned, always really, caring about where I was in my welfare. So she and my son picked me up from jail that day, and we went to a park. It was in the middle of summer, and that's when it hit me, and they're standing in front of me, and I'm like, they're like, we need a parent. We have to have a parent, because while I was in West Virginia getting sober, my ex-wife became an alcoholic.
How much were you spending a day when you were addicted to crystal meth? Because first you were smoking, and then you got into injecting, right?
Yeah. So there were 3 of us that toward the end that when we got into the shoplifting part, there were the 3 of us that would all 3 try to raise money. Sometimes we worked together, sometimes we didn't. Like I would be in Target or Walmart, I would send a picture of what I was stealing, like a vacuum cleaner, food processor, whatever, and the picture. Then they would be in the car, post the picture on Facebook Marketplace, and go to start to sell it before I got out with it. We actually printed our own barcodes, and you could replace them over the item. So we'd go to self-checkout. So a vacuum cleaner would be 99 cents because we figured out how to print the barcode.
No, I was just about to ask, how the hell do you steal a vacuum cleaner?
But you know what? Here's the thing: is I had a lot of very nice clothes from my prior life. I would dress up, white man in nice clothes in an affluent Target, and no one ever looked. No one ever. I filled my cart up. Here's what I would do: if I didn't have the barcodes, I'd fill the cart up. I'd walk over to the cafe, buy a pretzel and a drink, and walk right out the front door with no head turned. Now, there was one time I was hanging out with an African-American guy. We went into Target together. We weren't even stealing. We were there to shop. We were followed from the time we walked in till the time we left. I could not believe it because he would always say that, but I every time I looked around, there was an employee standing there staring at us. It was unbelievable. But yeah, I always took whatever I wanted, and no one ever questioned me, not once. Not once. Walmart, Target, everywhere, Best Buy. But as far as what we spent, I don't know. Probably it was only like $200 a day or something like that, because meth is pretty cheap, and when you shoot it up, it lasts a long time too. So, we would probably spend that much, I would say. And then the one guy I was with, one of them was an expert thief. He would somehow steal it too from people, and he stole a bunch of heroin once when we were at a house, and I don't know. It was just a lot of underhanded deeds.
Well, and the sex work, the prostitution, you put yourself on Craigslist, or what was your strategy then?
Yeah. So I went on Craigslist. And I bought a used massage table for like $40 somebody was selling. And then I became a masseur. And so, so I put an ad on Craigslist and ads on the dating apps like Grindr. You couldn't put the word masseur, so it was like relaxation specialist or whatever, but they knew what you meant. But yeah, I would just show up at their house, and then sometimes I would get a hotel room and put my ad out. There could be, I mean, in a day I sometimes seven massages. So you're looking at almost $1,000 there. Which I even did that after quitting meth. So in the beginning when I was sober, I had all my belongings were about to be auctioned off in a storage unit that I paid for by writing a bad check anyway. We needed to get a place to live, the kids and I, but I had an eviction and drug charges at the time. So we found an individual owner, but I needed to pay twice the deposit and first and second month's rent. And so I had all this money that I had to raise quickly, and I knew how to do it. And this time I was sober, so I was better at it. And so I was a sober prostitute too, which probably was, I say sober from crystal meth, but I wasn't sober from my sex addiction because it still played into that. But yeah.
It's pretty impressive almost in a way how much time and effort and intelligence goes into just being an addict. And I know some people who are alcoholics, and I see how much time they put into hiding and planning the whole day. Now, I have one friend who was an alcoholic, and she told me that all she ever thought about was drinking. So when they would go on vacation, like beforehand, she would have to do her research where she can get her fix, which was alcohol in her case, or if they sell it at that place, and how much money would she need, and how she would get the money because she was also unemployed. So it's so much effort, and I mean and I say impressive in a way that you're willing to put all that effort and time in, and you don't really stop to ask yourself, man, this is exhausting. And also I know from my example, it's also very interesting when you're on that downward spiral, when you're just stepping into the cave, so to speak, like at the beginning of your addiction. From the time when I started really getting into my addiction and to the time when I couldn't bear it anymore, I don't necessarily remember what I was thinking. I don't know. I don't ever remember thinking, hey, I'm getting addicted to this. It's like a blackout. It's almost as if when you don't want to stop, you could, but then when you want to stop, you can't stop anymore. To me, it seems like there's no in between. I don't know. What was your experience like? Did you ever stop to think, hey, this is becoming a problem, or was it just there all of a sudden? Because that's how it was for me.
The drugs were constantly convincing me that I was on the verge of getting a bunch of money to pay my rent, to buy a car, I was always right there on the verge. And I actually got really close because we were able to, we found some personal information from someone, and we were able to get into his bank account. And he had a lot of money in that bank account. But we fumbled and got, the bank locked it down because of the mysterious activity on it. We could have probably, if we were sober, been able to transfer that. But there was always this voice saying, you're right on the verge. You're going to get that money, and you're not. I couldn't comprehend that I was being evicted. I had wrote the bad check enough to get the movers to move stuff. Now that I did have the forethought to do that, but on the day of the eviction, the owner and the sheriff, and they knew I was drugged out because the owner put his arm around me, and the sheriff, and they're like, "You have to leave now. Like this is happening." I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I just didn't think that I could ever be homeless. It was 2.5 years prior. I was making $140,000,